Regardless of our positions on the science of CO2 and its ultimate impact on our human way of life, we have a long history of striving to do better in all we do. And yes, we can and should do better. From the wood-fired stove for warmth, to the coal-fired steam engine driving our early machines, to the internal combustion engine driving our ever-increasing car and truck fleets, to the growing number of electric or electric hybrids available to us today, innovation and technological change have powered the last 100 years of human existence like no other time in our history. Creative minds are and will continue to work on ways to develop and use the multitude of viable energy sources available to us in more environmental, practical, and responsible ways. How about we approach our worldview with a sense of balance and by generating practical solutions? The following are 7 suggestions for a future where human-produced incremental atmospheric CO2 and other greenhouse gas levels are managed in perhaps a better way. First, as burning coal creates about 2 times the amount of CO2 when compared to burning natural gas, accelerating the phasing out of coal-fired power plants, already underway in many jurisdictions, seems to be a practical first step and the one with by far the biggest impact. It would reduce our global CO2 footprint by 7,000 million tons. Natural gas, wind, and solar power generation are all well understood alternatives. Second, as burning gasoline, a refined oil derivative, in our internal combustion engines is the source of about 70% of CO2 emitted from oil sources, there are several ways available to reduce our emissions. These include continuing to increase vehicle fleet fuel efficiency through better engine technology and accelerating the use of electric and hybrid vehicles, changing up to half of our 1 billion global car and truck fleet over the next several decades. Also, we should continue to improve and increase access to our public transportation systems. These changes could reduce global CO2 emissions by as much as another 4,000 million tons. Car manufacturers now have a variety of vehicle options, and public transit investment is getting significant attention from our governments. Third, as oil and natural gas are the primary building blocks for so many of our modern-day conveniences, and between 7 to 9% of all product is lost or released during the development and production of the resource, we need to ensure the extraction of these 2 fossil fuels occurs with zero fugitive emissions. Methane is 25 times more potent than CO2 as a greenhouse gas. Technologies and methods to achieve zero fugitive emissions are also well developed. Fourth, as natural gas is the cleanest burning fossil fuel source, leverage it more for transport, heating, and industrial production. All options are proven in use. Fifth, as high-temperature industrial processes require significant energy inputs, cement making, heavy oil extraction, for example, continue to look for ways to make the same or more with less. The optimization of energy use through advanced processing technologies is also well developed in many industrial and process industries. Sixth, as about 15% of CO2 is generated in the operation of our homes and offices, take the simple steps of recycling, consuming less, insulating more, using LED lighting, and heating and cooling to more reasonable levels. Make choices of quality over quantity, purchasing items that last and use less. And finally, the 7th suggestion is, as our forests are key to the CO2 cycle and CO2 absorption, continue to promote reforestation that offsets and grows our forests at a rate of more than 0.5% per year. As of today, about 1/3 of our forests is still being eliminated. We need to collectively continue to promote and reward the increased growth of our more than 3 trillion trees. No magic solutions, breakthrough technologies, or crisis-inducing changes are required. We have the solutions to effectively manage our CO2 impact at hand. If you combine the above suggestions on a global scale, and with an economic model based on fairness and consistency of pricing for all, and approximately a 35-year phase-in period, we would return to CO2 levels of about 21,000 million tons and global consumption of about 4,000 million tons on an oil equivalent basis, or about the amount we had in the year 1990. It is achievable. Some might still say that is not enough change, and others may continue to challenge any suggested changes. After all, computer-generated climate models are predictions, and with the complexity of all the factors affecting climate, we are estimating potential outcomes. However, why take a chance of unintended consequences? Why not act in ways that guarantee the preservation of our way of life in balanced and achievable ways? We certainly have the means and capability to do this. Every one of the 7 suggestions is well understood and achievable now, with no new invention, only a commitment by all nations to moving forward fairly and consistently now. Perhaps what is required is a carbon fee, driving an enhanced economic model applied at point of production, the fossil fuel industry, and consumption, the consumer. Then use that fee to make continuous improvements in production and consumption, reinvesting and funding locally further invention and making a sustainable economy more achievable. We have one Earth. Let's do our best to care for it. We have many international trade agreements with complex methods for driving fair play across much of the industrialized world, and more coming. We need to put those agreements in use to help us achieve a level playing field and consistency for all. The industrializing world, China and India, need not be bystanders to working collectively to a balanced way of being for all, as they too are subject to global commerce and trade fundamentals. And we need to stop rewarding the governments of countries that exploit basic human rights and ignore fundamental environmental practices and exclude them from international trade and commerce. Beyond the solutions already mentioned, certainly humanity's drive for innovation will continue to surprise and delight us in ways not expected. Science fiction and pop culture continues to tantalize us with breathtaking technological achievements in the area of energy generation. Just think of Iron Man's arc reactor or the Avengers' Tetranex, and imagine new and even cleaner sources of energy yet to come. Certainly, how the sun generates its life-giving energy provides us with an amazing example of what is possible in nature, with a fusion reaction, and perhaps a clue to where invention is headed. And finally, regardless of the position we take on energy production and use, and its role in climate change in our lives, we should always be considering how our decisions and actions would impact the future. We need to make choices today that give our children and generations to come the best chance of success in their lives and the world we leave to them. So, imagine a world where we don't need a crisis to improve ourselves, but one in which the best choices arise through principles that we all agree on. After all, energy is life. Thanks for listening.